Good day. This is Paul of the House of Graber on the first day of October 2025. And everything that I bring on here on this broadcast, everything we do at the House of Graber, content, activities, etc., are all subject to and protected by the courts of heaven, by the common law, sometimes known as common law, the courts of heaven under the kingdom of God. And our material and content and activities are also protected by the private registered copyright of the House of Graber. Today's topic that I want to talk about a little bit as a follow-up to a video I did, or a live I did about a week ago. Today's topic is, what are bishops for? What do you think? Specifically talking to people that grew up in the Amish church, but it's also in other denominations, sometimes known as pastors or elders or maybe priests. What are bishops for? What is it supposed to look like? And what is their role and responsibility? Well, first of all, I'm going to say that the viewpoint that I grew up with in looking at a bishop, and it's still that way for most of them, they tend to be a mafia leader. When I was in Michigan City back in 2013, some of the guys there, the popular show on TV was Amish Mafia. And a whole lot of hype and a whole lot of things that are just pretty crazy. But the guys there asked me, is there actually an Amish Mafia? I said, yeah, there is, but it doesn't look like what they make it look like. It's different. But so what are bishops for, and what should they do? What are they doing? What I've experienced, and I suppose most of you that grew up in the Amish church or were members of the Amish church have experienced similar things, that the bishop would be the one to kind of lead the making and or enforcing rules. Some of these rules that they enforced were already in place for quite a long time, and some of them were relatively new, and because they're man-made rules, they were and still are subject to change at any given moment. Man-made rules can be changed daily, just like clothing and underwear. But God's principles don't change. And so that was kind of, back in 2012, I had a conversation with a nephew of mine, and regarding something that had happened in his, it was the area that he grew up in and lived in at the time, and still does as far as I know, where someone had started up a center for the Amish youth to play basketball and softball and etc., football or whatever. I never was there, but I've been by and looked at the place. But the guy had to actually sell get rid of venue that he had created, because the bishop thought, and maybe a few other people in the district thought, that he shouldn't have it. And my nephew made the comment that he knows, he's aware that what the bishop did isn't right. But they still have to honor him because God put the bishop in place to be bishop. Well, that's actually a lie, because the people put him there. If the rest of the church would have not ordained him, he wouldn't be there. So that's just not true. We can't blame God. We can, and a lot of people do, but we probably hadn't ought to blame God for things that we did. And let's assume, for the sake of this conversation, that he's right. God put him there. Like in the example of Saul, King Saul, he was the chosen one to be king, even though the Hebrews, Israel, the family, the house, or the house of Israel, the Hebrews, they went against God's will and said they want a king, because they were looking at the Babylonian system around them. But once they were set and there was no other way out, then God chose Saul to be that king. We comprehend from reading in Scripture that he was the one that God preferred to be the king. But he lost that position, and he lost favor of God, because he transgressed. He took things into his own hands, and then he tried to blame it on the people. Didn't work out so well for him. So even if we can all agree that the bishop is chosen by God, and we want to be very careful, maybe we should ask the question, who is the God that put him there? Who are they calling God? Sometimes people want to use pronouns, he or him, and they refuse to say who they're talking about, God or Jesus Christ or whatever they're referring to. Want to be very clear. But let's assume that we can agree that the living God put the bishop in place to be bishop, to operate in that office, because bishop office is actually the correct term. It's an office. A man does not become a bishop. He only occupies the office of bishop. Well, whether he's operating in the office of bishop or whether he's doing something else otherwise outside of that office, whether he's operating as a worker in the RV factory, or whether he's farming and tilling the soil, or whether he's doing construction or horseshoeing or whatever he's doing, when he lies to people and betrays people, and he does things that are unrighteous, then it's unrighteous. It's wrong. That doesn't change because of what office he holds, whether it's bishop or street sweeper or whatever it is. It doesn't change the nature of that. Okay, so what are the duties and the responsibilities of that office? the office, bishop office, or any other office, deacon, bishop, President of the United States of America, you name it, notary. Some people hold an office of notary public, and they witness things on behalf of the Secretary of State. But in every case, it's an office of limited, delegated authority. And whatever office you occupy, it is impossible for the office to hold more authority than those who delegated that authority to that office. Let's say we have a business of, like I used to do, refurbish ink cartridges. And let's say I create an office of secretary for that business, and I delegate some specific duties to that office. And the one that occupies the office is the one that is responsible to fulfill those duties. So the duties might be sending out invoices, ordering cartridges, collections, accounts payable, and maybe sending out some weekly mailers for advertising, whatever it is. It's a delegated authority. So the man or woman that sits in that that occupies that office, that's what they are authorized to do. And it's a step down because it's delegated authority. And because I'm the one that created that office as the owner of the business, then the office is beholden to me as the owner. However, when that man or woman, whoever it is, steps out of that office, clocks out in the evening or whenever, weekends, then we're equal. There's like no difference. Likewise, the bishop office, the worldly system has office of bishop. God's people have bishop office. There's a big difference. The bishop office is an office that has delegated authority, limited delegated authority. And this horse hockey of using that office to control the church and to whip people in line and to judge them when they do something that doesn't quite meet the standards of what the bishop and the deacon or whoever it is thinks they should be, that's not the way it should be. That's wrong. That's a worldly system. That's not what we're called to be as God's people. It's like the one in that office, in the bishop office, is called to be a protector of God's people, the assembly, the ecclesia, or for a lack of better terms, the church. He's supposed to be a protector, just like we as men, heads of house, are called to be a protector of our own house. We are called to stand at the door, at the gate of the castle, and protect those within, so that the ones that are without may not come in and harm our own. Hi, honey. Good to see you on here. So the bishop office is an office of delegated authority, and the responsibility of that office is to interface with the outside world and protect the ones that are within. We are to stand at the door and protect the ones within. What most of these bishops are doing, they are taking instructions from the state, especially now that they've become a state church. They're incorporated. They're not taking instructions or getting their authority from the people. What they are doing, hey, Leroy, good to see you on here. Kevin, good to see you on here. What they are doing is taking instructions from the hierarchy outside. They're state agents. They've got the role reversed. And shame on them. They will be responsible. They will be held accountable for their wrongdoings. I'm not saying that I will hold them accountable. I'm saying they will be held accountable, because they are casting their own people to the wolves, to the public system, the public kangaroo court system, the outside Babylonian system. They take their own and they throw them out. They take orders from the state. They take orders from the hierarchy of bishops and other so-called top brass. And this, I'm using the Amish as an example because that's what I'm familiar with. However, the other churches are just the same. Some of them are worse. But they're all, you know, it's chocolate cake with pink frosting, chocolate cake with white frosting, chocolate cake with yellow frosting, chocolate cake with green, orange, whatever. It's all chocolate cake underneath. So, for example, when someone gets in trouble with, you know, goes to jail or gets tangled up in the outside system, the county health department or whatever, whichever one of the 1,010 departments of the great old war that people get entangled with, when that happens, the bishops, in many cases, they side with the outside system. They throw their own people to the wolves. And I've seen this happen. Men who are reasonable and level-headed and very, very straightforward and like very respectful within the Amish church, and they get ordained to the ministry, and then they get ordained to the bishop office, and everything goes to hell in a handbasket. They become crooks. They lie to your face and don't even flinch. Don't think nothing of it, because here's what's going on. There's an inside clique amongst the bishops. And these new bishops have about so long, and I don't know exactly what that time window is, but they have an X amount of time to join the clique and become part of the inner clique of, you know, the enforcers. Sorry about that. Somebody trying to beep in, some pesky telemarketer. They have about so long, and if they don't join the club of enforcers, they become the next target. It's a hierarchy system. And they completely and totally throw, like, the duty that they are actually responsible for, the duties and the responsibilities of protecting their own, they just toss that to the side in exchange for a power trip of some supposed high position. And it's not a high position. It's a low position. A limited delegated, an office with limited delegated authority, the office is always lower than the ones who delegated that authority. The creation is always subject to and inferior to the Creator. When man creates an office, then that office is always subject to man. That which one creates, one controls. And for the bishop to tell the church what they have to do and what they can't do or can do is like me telling my Creator, listen, I don't like the way you're doing things. I'm going to fix you, and we're going to change some things around here. It's a disaster. Same way with the courts and the churches trying to fix marriage. They fail miserably because marriage was here before them. They don't have the authority. They don't have the jurisdiction. They don't have the right. They have nothing. Doesn't mean that we can't help people with marriage and or whatever's going on, support each other. That's a different thing. And if you have somebody, like if you go and ask somebody for help, now that becomes an entirely different game. But a lot of these bishops, most of them, look at this office as a position of power and authority that they can just, run over people. And the only reason they can run over people is because the people let them. All you got to do is stand up and say, shove it. And now, they tried to split me and Carol. They tried their best. And I'm blessed to say that both of us didn't go along with that. We just didn't participate in their nonsense. The bishop office, the way it's supposed to be, the way it's intended, and the way it works when one actually does what one is intended to do, that office is a doorway, or it's an office where the occupant of that office is the protector of the ones that, you could call it an overseer, or you could call it whatever it is, but I don't like to refer to it as their district, because it's not theirs. It's the group of people that they work with. But nevertheless, that office is, the occupant of that office is called and is responsible and has a duty to protect the people from the outside system. Hey Nate, good to see you on here. The occupant of the bishop office is called to protect. If the outside system, let's say health department, starts harassing somebody because they're serving food, or let's say, I watched a video last night. I watched part of a video of a court session, kangaroo court session, where an Amish couple was being drugged through court for running a birthing center. And the bishop, if he knew and understood and respected, probably nobody ever taught him, but if he knew his position of what he really is called to do, he would send a letter to that judge and the swamp creature from the health department, because that's what they are, they're swamp creatures. He would send a letter and put those scallywags on notice that this issue, this matter that they're trying to adjudicate is not theirs to adjudicate. They belong here. They're part of the ecclesia. And the ecclesia court has the highest jurisdiction. It's the highest court on the planet. You don't get to mess with them. So just drop it and butt out, because if you continue, now that you've been warned, if you continue to mess with them and you continue to try to harvest them and harass them, our Creator will smack you, and He will smack you hard. However that communication goes, that's the duty that the bishop has. And I don't know, because I haven't talked with any of those people, but I would venture to say that that bishop is not only clueless as to how to handle it or what to do, but maybe he doesn't even want to get involved. Like, just look the other way, even if he knows it isn't right. I don't know who that is. I don't have a clue. So it's not about criticizing that man particularly. I'm saying that there's a serious deficiency in how these people think of occupying that office. They're missing the boat. And if that particular district is incorporated as a 501c3, like many of them are, then it's pretty much a given that the state court is going to run their show anyway, because they've asked for it. If the cops grab some young folks and throw them in jail in, let's say, a particular area that a bishop is called to oversee, he should grab his papers and his documentation and go visit the sheriff and instruct them to turn these people loose, because they're not one of yours, they're one of ours. Hey, Irina, good to see you. And yeah, I know there's all kinds of argument about, yeah, but they were out drinking and partying and we don't approve of that and blah, blah. Listen, did they harm anyone? I know personally of a situation where kids were at an alcohol party and they had enough common sense to crawl in their car and sleep it off until Sunday instead of trying to drive home drunk. And these low-down, scumbag pieces of crap sheriffs come and yank them out of the car and haul them off to jail. That's kidnapping. Their own statutes say that the penalties for kidnapping and or attempted kidnapping is imprisonment, fine, and death. That's kidnapping, taking people hostage, holding them for ransom. There is not even one shred of righteousness in that whole process. They're thugs and bullies with guns and clubs. And if the bishop doesn't know enough to stand in the door and then they're running around saying, oh, I wish the young folks would, I wish. Now, the young folks aren't interested because it's a messed up cult. where the ones that are supposed to be the protectors are throwing them to the wolves. These boys, whether you approve of them drinking or not, is irrelevant. They didn't harm anyone. There's no crime committed. In order for a crime to be committed, there has to be two elements. There has to be intent, and there has to be damage or harm of some kind. If one of them's missing, then it's that. There's no crime. If one of them's missing, then there is no crime. There has to be both. And in this case, there was neither one of them present. No intent nor harm. All traffic tickets are fraud because there's no intent to harm anyone and there's no harm. It's just a paper contract where they create bonds. So if the bishop, the man who's occupying the bishop office, if he understood and cared about his position, that he really is, that he has taken upon himself or has been put on him, however you want to look on it. If he comprehended that position, he would go to the sheriff and tell him, look, here's the deal. These boys weren't harming anyone. You have exactly 1 hour to hand them over to me, or the church will hold court and you're going to be indicted with a real court. The one time that our son got cuffed and thrown in jail, and he ended up being in there 30 days, that happened on a Sunday afternoon. That evening, Carol and I delivered a package of paperwork to the sergeant that was running the jail. And I went through that whole package and I showed her point by point, this is who we are, this is what we expect, etc., etc. And I reminded her of what happened to the sheriff previous to this one that held me for 22 days without authorization, without any right, without any consent. He just held me. They buried him less than a year later. Sheriff Chamberlain from Marshall County. And she took that as a threat. I said, it's not a threat. It's an observation of what happened. It did happen, didn't it? It's just how it is. In other words, are you sure you want to go down this road? Next time I saw this woman, she was all cocky and smart, and she informed me that he's not getting out on her watch and blah, blah, blah. Next time I saw her, she was working the security checkpoint at the courthouse. I said, I haven't seen you over here before. What's going on? She goes, oh, you know, change positions. Well, she got demoted. They shuffled her around because she became a liability. She took that whole package. She was too... Anyway. And there wasn't a lot that came out of that, but those things make a difference, is what I'm telling you. They make a difference. Because they know that I'm not just going to sit by and watch. In 2012, when I was arrested and I went to Kosciuszko County Jail and I was there for 10 days, I came home with a commitment. I came home with a commitment that I will never, ever call the cops on anyone for drinking. I don't care if they're 95 years old or 15 years old or in between. Never. Because I saw what happened with these young folks that came in there. They're destroying lives is what they're doing. They're not helping anyone. It's a cash machine, cash cow, profitable machine for the state and the county. That's what it is. They have no intent to help people. They have no intent to help anyone except their own financial accounts. They create bonds and securities that are worth, on every arrest, and every court case that they start up, they create bonds and securities that are worth millions and millions and millions of dollars. Now, back to the bishop office. Why are these bishops, the men that are occupying these bishops' office, why are they not stepping up and protecting their own? Well, I think in a lot of cases, they don't even know what their duty is. They're oblivious. And also, they're on a power trip. It makes them feel like they're somebody important if they can, chastise one of their own. They got it backwards. They just got it backwards. It's just backwards as all get out. And a man told me several years ago, and I agree with him, he said, if the bishop isn't doing his job, then the church needs to fire him and put another one in his place. That's how it should be. I think it's, don't quote me, because I can't remember where it is. It's one of Paul's letters. He talks about the office of bishop. Something to the effect that it should be somebody that knows how to go to lead their own house and protect their own house, because that's really what it is. It's just a bigger, it's one house or it's multiple houses. The responsibility of a bishop or one who occupies a bishop office is the same as one who is going to be the head of a house. It's the same responsibility, essentially. And most men, sad to say, are clueless on both of them. This is serious business. There are people groups, not very many, but there are people groups who understand this, like the Hooderites. Now, you can agree with how they do things internally or not. I've never been there. I haven't talked with them personally. But I have been told of situations where one of their folks got into a traffic accident where somebody actually died, and they were going to process him through the court system for manslaughter. This was an accident. Somebody got killed accidentally. There was no intent. Hey, Ruth. So there was no crime. Was there responsibility for restitution? Well, a righteous way of thinking would dictate that if somebody pulls out in front of us and we T-bone them and they die, then, technically, maybe not, but as God's people, we should see what we can do to help that family if we have the means to help them in any way to make the burden easier. But the state should not meddle with it. What are they going to do? They're going to make a situation that's already painful for a lot of people and make it worse. Why? Because they want to put money in their coffers. They want to harvest the people. They don't make anything better. So the leader of the community came and got the guy, took him home. Some of the people didn't like it, but that's how it is. And that's how it should be. The bishop office is a serious position, and most of the Amish bishops have made a mockery out of it. Not to mention all the others, pastors, and you know, the 197 gazillion different religions, priests and pastors and elders and whatever they call themselves, they've made a mockery out of it. And the day of accountability is coming for those people. The bishop office is a serious position, and it would be better if they refused that office than to take it and act the way a lot of them do. Have an amazing day. Hope this helps to clarify some things, and we'll see you next time.